Greetings from AthenaVision Studios, and welcome to our 11th episode of Parthenon Particles. I'm your host, Lieutenant Commander Joseph Fugate. Our special guest for this episode will be Recruit Derek Martin from the Athena's Operations Department. In Star Trek news, the next big series, Starfleet Academy, has finally received a premiere date and trailer. The series will begin on January 15th, 2026 on Paramount+. Look to the description of this video to view the trailer on YouTube. To enhance the new series for attendees at New York Comic-Con, the Star Trek Starfleet Academy interactive experience was offered. In groups of 5 individuals, people were invited to consoles where they answered fun, hypothetical questions to determine what sort of cadet you'd be, to create an ID card for you to use throughout the rest of the exhibit. Staff dressed in costume remain in character, helping guests along the process. The following rooms had simple games to play while immersing guests in the look and feel of the new series. Afterward, everyone got to keep their branded ID and were given a clear stadium bag and pin to use throughout the rest of the convention. Collectibles revealed at the New York Con included a Fan Homes re-release of the Eagle Moss Extra Large Starship Collection. Seen here are, of course, the original series 1701 Enterprise, and for those fond of the new animated shows, the Cerritos from Lower Decks and the Protostar from Prodigy. And for those of you with big bucks, a $350 limited edition gold-plated Enterprise 1701G Constitution 3 class. Hallmark had a presence, adding to Starbase One Commander Phil Barnes' keepsake collection, Mariner and Boimler from Lower Decks, Guinan from The Next Generation, the Star Trek Strategic Operations Simulator arcade game with lights and sounds, and the Enterprise G from Star Trek Picard. Though they did not have a booth, toy company Nacelle held a panel where they made some reveals and opened up pre-orders from their second wave of action figures that will include James T. Kirk from the film Generations, Catherine Janeway from the 2-part episode Year of Hell, Nog from the episode Favor the Bold, Carol Marcus from the Wrath of Khan, T'Pol, Valeris, the Romulan commander from the episode Balance of Terror, Bem, and Generation Sailors editions of Worf and Geordi LaForge. Nacelle also released a preview image of Wave 3 Original Series Spock, which will include accessories from the episode Amok Time, including a monitor showing his betrothed Pring, a sash, and a lirpa. Also included are the visor from Is There in Truth No Beauty, an Idic pendant, a 3D chess set, several interchangeable hands, and the typically expected tricorder communicator and phaser. Speaking to fans on Instagram, Marina Sirtis called the chances of further TNG cast reunions to be 0 to none, following the 3rd season of Picard. Regarding the idea of resurrecting Deanna Troi herself, Sirtis said that if they asked her to be in one of the other shows, she would consider it. She said that she wouldn't just go back to say, "Captain, he's hiding something," but if it were Meteor, that she would give it her consideration. Meanwhile, it's felt that the chances for a show possibly titled Star Trek Legacy and starring Seven of Nine as the captain of the Enterprise G is slipping away. Picard Season 3 showrunner Terry Matalas has said that despite a popular fan petition and letter writing campaign, that there has been no official interest in the series. So he says it's going to be up to the fans to make it happen. Upcoming events for the Athena crew are an online Zoom meeting in the Owl Odyssey Lounge on Monday, October 20th. The lounge will open at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, and will close promptly after 2 hours at 9 Central, 10 Eastern. Please join us for the Light the Night charity walk in memory of Fleet Captain Peck's brother Billy, who passed away from leukemia at age 26. This is a public event at First Horizon Stadium in downtown Nashville. If you can't attend, please consider donating online via the link in the description of this video. There will be an online Zoom trivia event on Tuesday, October 28th at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Questions are answered as a group, so please don't be embarrassed by your lack of Trek knowledge. For those of you that haven't attended before, we'll discuss the format before we begin. Join us, and if you don't know something, then you'll probably learn something. Our first IDIC dinner has been added to the coming event schedule. These dinners will focus on foreign foods, and the first one, in line with our ship's Hellenic theme, will be at the Grecian Family Restaurant and Bakery in Spring Hill on Saturday, November 1st at 5 p.m. Central Time. On Thanksgiving weekend, the Starbase Indy convention is held in Indianapolis. This event is where Starfleet Command has its annual membership meeting to discuss all that matters about the organization. Awards are also handed out. The Athena was awarded Large Starship of the Year at this last meeting and was the fleet's flagship a few years in a row prior to that. For more information and to purchase a badge for the convention, see the link in the description. Look for the invitation soon for our annual Christmas party, which will be held at the home of Starbase One Commander Phil Barnes in Hendersonville on the weekend after Starbase Indy. For those willing to make their homes available or suggest a possible venue, the Athena is looking for places to hold viewing parties. These events are typically held on Saturday evenings after the premiere of a new series or season. The host must have room to accommodate roughly a dozen people around an appropriately sized television that has access to Paramount Plus. Now, let's get to our guest. Derek Martin, welcome to Parthenon Particles, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
How'd you come about Starfleet Command? How did you come to Starfleet Command in the USS Athena?
Well, I've had a meetup group for watching classic movies like sci-fi and horror since 2011. And I think about 5 or 6 years ago, Ryan and Kathy, who lead Athena group, and I got to know them. And then they set up a Star Trek meetup group for a while. But when costs became prohibitive, they decided to only have their Facebook group, USS Athena. So it was when they ended their meetup group that I joined Starfleet Command, I think around 4 or 5 years ago, and got involved in USS Athena.
Okay. Very good then. What about Star Trek? When did you first become interested in Star Trek?
There was an old movie theater in Nashville that some may remember called the Bell Mead Theater, and it's since been turned into a grocery store. Now I think it sits vacant. But I saw Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan there when it came out back in 1982. I think I went for about 3 or 4 showings of it, and I fell in love with it. And then a couple of years later, they reran all the original episodes from Star Trek late night 10:30. And somehow I got my parents to let me stay up on school nights from 10:30 to 11:30 to watch them all.
Wow.
And so discovering the original series, that's really what kicked off my interest. And then,
Wow.
of course, Next Generation came along, and I always tried to see the Star Trek movies on their first day in theaters. And so that's
Yes.
kind of how I became a fan. So it's, I guess, been 43 years now we're going on.
Okay. Do you have a favorite series?
I do. Since the original series is what I first discovered, I'm partial to it. After that, I really like the deep storytelling where the good and bad lines get murky with Deep Space Nine. But I also enjoy Star Trek Next Generation with Captain Picard. He brought a different element than Captain Kirk did to the captaincy role. And I was recently telling the Athena group that I'm a big fan of the Cage episode, the original pilot from Star Trek. And I really like actor Jeffrey Hunter and kind of his approach to the captaincy role in that one episode he did. And I would have been curious, if he'd stayed on. I think they couldn't work out a financial deal with him. But I would have liked to see what he would have done. But unfortunately, he passed away, I believe, in the late 60s, early 70s. And so if the captain of Star Trek had passed away, we might not have had all these movies and it might not have kept going. So in some ways,
Yes.
it's a blessing to us that William Shatner wound up getting the role.
And he's lived so long.
I know. It's amazing. I think 94, I think I saw he just
Yes.
turned, and we are so lucky. I got to see him 2 or 3 years ago in Nashville, and I think Ryan and Kathy were there. They did a screening of The Wrath of Khan at the War Memorial Auditorium in downtown Nashville, and William Shatner came in person to share some memories from it.
Wow. Okay.
So I appreciate the fact that he's choosing to spend these years of his life, going around to conventions and still interacting with fans. Some people kind of
Yes.
step away as they get older from conventions, but he's going strong.
Yes, he is. I mentioned that in our last episode of Parthenon Particles that he, even though he was recently hospitalized, that didn't slow him
Yeah,
down at all. So,
that's right.
um, let's see. Do you have a favorite character?
Oh, I would probably Spock. I like the analogy I read once where William Shatner's who we aspire to be as far as Captain Kirk, the leader, but Mr. Spock, in a way, is who a lot of humans really are. We've all got self doubts and inner conflicts. So I think Leonard Nimoy maybe got the best role by being able to play Mr. Spock. So I would
Yes.
lean towards him. I do have a funny story there. I have life-size cardboard cutouts of Shatner and Spock. And sadly, I think it was in 2007, there was an attempted burglary of my home. Fortunately, my alarm went off and they didn't get in. They ran away. But my father, I was out of town. My father came down to let the police in. And I had Kirk and Spock at my far back door. And of course, I think they may have had their phasers drawn in the standee. And so the cops thought for a second it was real people. And my father said I was very lucky not to have the back of my place shot up. So he loved to tell that stories as the years have gone by. But anyway, I just wanted to share that story. Now they're
Oh,
safely
that's
upstairs
funny.
where that can't happen again.
Okay. Oh, um, I'm told you've been to a lot of conventions and may have some stories from conventions.
I do. I first went to a Star Trek convention. Well, not a Star Trek convention, but it's called Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 2003. I
Most
had
people are
friends that went
familiar.
to cons and they were trying to get me to go for years. And sometimes I could be stubborn, but finally that year I went. And the biggest celebrity I remember meeting is George Takei. Uh, and he was great with the audience. And
Yes.
some of these stories I still remember, things they told us. He said when they aired the episode of Next Generation, The Nick and Now, that might have been the first episode they aired. he said he called out Jimmy Duhon and was like, "What is this? Is this really the best they can do for a new TV series, copying this old episode from our series?"
Right.
And but then he said, once Next Generation became a hit, he would go around saying, "Hey, this is our show. Look what our efforts have produced and stuff." So he just had a great sense of humor. He loved to joke about Shatner. He said he loved the Undiscovered Country movie, where at the end of the episode, William Shatner has to look up at Captain Takei and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. And then in 2006, I went to my first Vegas Creation Entertainment convention. And that's where I think maybe the biggest Star Trek convention every year, the one they do in Vegas. And that was where in '06 I got to meet William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy.
Okay.
And what I really love about that convention is they will bring in a lot of guest stars from Star Trek. Uh, One of the things I'm passionate for is Hammer horror movies that were filmed in England from the 50s to the 70s. And there's lots of fans out there too, probably in your audience, of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Well, I
Yes.
got to meet Stephanie Beacham, who played Countess Bartholomew in the Next Generation episode. And I asked her, what was it like working with Peter Cushing in Dracula AD 72? And she said he was like a gentleman. She really enjoyed working with him. The one story she told me is that Peter Cushing had just lost his wife. And he had lost so much weight since her passing and become very frail that they changed his role from playing her father to playing her grandfather. Because with him aging like 10 years, it no longer looked believable for him to be her father.
Okay.
So that's what's fun about these cons is if you get like 30 seconds to a minute, even at their tables, just sometimes they'll tell you a background story. If I can
Nice.
share another one,
Yes.
Michelle Forbes. She starred in Next Generation as a guest
Lots
star
of
and
things.
recently played in Picard.
Yes.
She's a lot like her personality. When I met her, that she plays like in Battlestar Galactica, the commander, very tough and authoritative. But I liked her because at the Creation Entertainment, often they just want you to sign your name as the celebrity, but she took time to personalize the autographs if you wanted her to. And
Okay.
when she was on stage, I asked her about her working on Guy and Light back in the '80s, a daytime soap opera. And when she signed the autograph to me, it's like, "Yeah, I can't believe you brought that up, something so long ago." And I told her, "Well, I was trying to take it easy on you. I could have asked if you knew anything about a vampire movie called Love Bites, a very low budget vampire movie she did that's not very well regarded." So she
Okay.
thought for a second, and then she just pointed to the door and told me to get out. And then she started laughing. But so again, some of these celebrities, they just have great personalities, and you can joke with them a little bit about their past careers, and they take it well.
Nice.
And I can
Okay.
go on with a couple of additional stories if we have time.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to glance here. I made a little list because in case I forgot anybody that I met that might be of interest in the Star Trek world. Here's a big one. Susan Howard. She is mainly known for playing Donna Krebs on the soap opera Dallas in the '80s. But she was in the Star Trek episode Day of the Dove, where she played the Klingon commander's wife. And they talked her into coming. She was like a public commissioner, I think, of the arts in Texas at the time, but they talked her into coming for one day to the Vegas convention. And I was glad to meet her because on Dallas, she would always play the successful businesswoman, author, and her husband, Ray, really couldn't handle it well. He was very, I guess, had self-confidence issues, and having such a successful wife, they eventually got divorced. And I told her how growing up watching her in Dallas, I swore that if I was with a woman, a wife, or a girlfriend who was more successful than me, I would be proud of her instead of being. And I think she just appreciated knowing, how her work on Dallas, continued to inspire people, and people were still watching it 30 to 40 years later.
Yes.
And as we talked
Wow.
about earlier, one thing that's sad is since I've been going for 22 years to these cons, a lot of these celebrities have passed away. I was glad to meet Sally Kellerman, who starred on the original episode where No Man Has Gone Before. We recently lost her. She was also well known for MASH. And of course, Nichelle Nichols, I got to meet her a couple of times. And of course, Leonard Nimoy, I got to meet. And it's just, sad as time goes on. But as you said, I'm so glad that Shatner, Takei, and Koenig are still with us. And
Yes.
let's see, if we have any Dark Shadows fans out there in the audience, when more celebrities were still alive, they used to do Dark Shadows conventions every year. I think they'd rotate
Nice.
between Los Angeles and New York. And one year I got to go meet Jonathan Fred, who played Barnabas, out in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And another big celebrity they had is David Selby that played Quentin Collins. And I grew up watching him on Falcon Crest, and I was really glad to meet him.
Okay.
And I love getting their autographs signed and kind of displaying them throughout my home. You can tell behind me, I collect memorabilia. If you can see them, I've got a collection of Star Trek plates right behind me.
Yes.
Let's see, who else might I mention here? People ask, what's my favorite Star Trek episode? And I would either rotate between Balance of Terror or The Menagerie from the original series.
Okay.
So one time they brought in Maliki Throne to the Star Trek Vegas convention, and he's since passed away. But he played the commander that participates in the court martial of Spock and Menagerie. And they also brought in Sean Kinney, who played Captain Pike in the wheelchair. And he told me about how they did like a blue jeans on his face and stuff, trying to make him look like all the war injuries he was supposed to have had. So again, just a lot of great memories of celebrity encounters.
Wow. Okay. So you recently hosted a Halloween viewing party at your home.
Yes, we I did Robert Bloch. Robert Bloch wrote 3 episodes of the original series, Wolf in the Fold, Cat's Paw, and What Little Girls Are Made Of, I believe. And I first suggested to Ryan that I could show all 3 episodes. And he thought, well, since the Star Trek group has probably seen those episodes a lot, he suggested I perhaps show some other things that Robert Bloch wrote. I didn't want to do a full movie like Psycho, but instead I dug up, I have most of the horror anthology series on DVD. So there's an episode of Tales from the Dark Side that Brent Spiner starred in, where there's a corpse, a grandpa that will not stay dead. He's supposed to be dead, but he won't stop breathing or just living. And Brent Spiner is brought in, I think that's kind of as a minister, to convince him to stay dead. There's another episode of a Thriller from the 60s, hosted by Boris Karloff. And William Shatner starred in that episode, along with Natalie Schaefer, who we know from Mrs. I think Drysdale on Gilligan's Island. And these are episodes that Robert Bloch the episode is based on the original story of his, and he may have worked on the script of them. And so we ended up doing that. And I think Ryan and Kathy and I were pretty happy with it. People seem to really enjoy that. Some other things I've done for the Star Trek group. This is in 2015, before I actually met Ryan and Kathy. Leonard Nimoy passed away, and I wanted to do something for him. And so over 2 nights, a Friday and a Saturday, I had 30 people come to my house, and I showed the Star Trek episode Journey to Babel, where we meet Spock's family for the first time, and we see the estranged relationship between Spock and his father.
Okay.
And after that, I showed the Star Trek movie, The Voyage Home. And I love the ending of that movie, where after Spock and Kirk and the crew save the day, Spock has a conversation with his father. And his father says to him, as I recall, I opposed your enlistment in Starfleet. It's possible that judgment was incorrect. And I kind of thought that was a great way to bring closure to the relationship with Spock and his dad. And that's a very special memory of doing that. When Nichelle Nichols passed away, I believe she has said her favorite episode was the one from the animated series, The Lorelei Signal, where she gets to take command of the Enterprise. And so for her, I showed that episode first. And then I believe I showed Mirror, Mirror, where she gets quite a good acting role, having to play kind of a dark side to herself. That'd be another favorite episode of mine.
Okay.
And others I've done, let's see, I think it's maybe Enemy Mine with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. I showed that movie, and a corresponding Star Trek episode with Geordi, where he's trapped on a planet with a Romulan.
Yes.
And they have to work together to survive. So yeah, just kind of pairing things up like that. And one I want to do, and I've been talking about for years, since I love Balance of Terror, it is based on an old movie called The Enemy Below with Robert Mitchum, where it's a U.S., I believe, submarine and fighting a Soviet ship. Kind of the
Okay.
same cat and mouse game between the commanders through the movie. So I promised the group within the next year, I'm going to schedule those.
Okay.
And if anybody out there is interested in joining our group, the meetup group is called Horror Suspense Fantasy Friends on meetup.com. And then I've got a Facebook group as well for those that don't want to have a meetup account. Sometimes it's just easier to join through Face group. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes.
And I've got an account. It's the same thing, Horror Suspense Fantasy Friends in Middle Tennessee on the Facebook page. So yeah, anybody out there that wants to learn more about our viewings or attend, you're welcome to join us.
Okay. Great. Going back to Robert Bloch, I'm a Psycho fan. Uh,
Oh, cool.
I, in fact, read the book Psycho.
Here she is. Sorry. Gabby, say hi to the folks here a second. Okay. Right. So that's great. You like Psycho too, all right?
Yes. Yeah, I really, in fact, I enjoy uh, the other, the two movies that followed, not the fourth one so much. That was more of a made for TV thing, but,
Right.
uh, oh, so yeah, while on vacation, my, my mother enjoys going to flea markets and stuff, and we happened to go to a flea market while we were on vacation to Florida, and I picked up a novel that had all three books in it. That had Psycho in the second
Wow.
book, and then Psycho House, and that was when I read the first book, which I was surprisingly good. I really enjoyed getting a little more background to who Norman Bates was. So,
The books yet. I need to. And I agree with you. I like Psycho 2 and 3 as well. When Olivia Hussey passed away, I believe about maybe a year ago, I showed the her actually Psycho 4 in tribute to her. Uh,
yes.
she plays Norman Bates' mother, and I thought does a really good job. And I still need to watch the series Bates Motel. Um, but yeah, I know I think Anthony Perkins directed Psycho 3, if I'm not mistaken. I thought he did a really good job.
Yes. I
Yeah,
especially
he
like
passed
the
away at
bit
way
of
too young an age.
I especially like the bit of trivia in the second movie that when he stands at his mother's door and sees the reflection of a boy, that's actually his son Osgood Perkins.
I did not know that. Cool.
Yes. Yeah, there's yeah, when so as he stands there, the door eventually changes and becomes the door of the past, which makes it shiny and he can see his reflection in it. But
Wow.
yes, the reflection that he sees is is Anthony Perkins' son Osgood.
I will look for that
So
next time I watch it. Yeah, I love how Vera Miles comes back in the second movie, the same actress who played her in the first movie, and she just can't let it go. She's so
no.
consumed by rage. And of course, the horrible chain of events unfolds as we'll let people watch the movie who haven't seen it, but it's a great film.
Yes. Oh. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss?
Let me
Any
quickly,
other celebrity memories that stand out to
let's see
you?
here. Well, one of my great pleasures from DragonCon, I think it was around 2008 or 2009, they brought in William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy together for the first time. And I think they'd appeared together at other cons over the years, but it was my first time to see them in person. And they were great feeding off each other, and they would give each other a hard time. It was 2009 because the first Star Trek movie had just come out with Chris Pine. And so
Yes.
when they start off the question and answer session, Leonard just looks over at Shatner and says, "Have you seen any good movies lately?" And then Shatner just goes off about how he's not in the movie. Um, I always thought the solution would have been, if J.J. Abrams had wanted to, was to have William Shatner play young Captain Kirk's grandfather. And when Spock, have him, Spock in the audience, the old Spock, watching the awards ceremony at the end, have him turn and say, "Aren't you proud of your grandson?" Have William Shatner sitting there saying, "Yes, I am." So it's kind of a shame William Shatner wasn't in the movie, but the directors have to use their best judgment. But for those who are familiar with it, apparently Leonard Nimoy had a bicycle that he would ride to the commissary on lunch in the original series during filming breaks. And he said he needed to get to the commissary first to eat so he could get back so they could touch up his ears before the afternoon shooting would start. Well, William Shatner enjoyed eating and didn't really like Leonard Nimoy beating him to the commissary. So he started
Okay.
doing things to this bicycle. One time he had the bicycle put in his trailer where he had, I think, his pet Dobermans. Of course, Nimoy was terrified to go in his trailer. Another time, I think he had it chained to a fence nearby. Then Leonard Nimoy thought, "I'm going to outsmart Shatner. I'm going to hide it in my trunk of my big car." William Shatner had his car towed away. Another time, and this is them telling the story, so I'm not making it up. Another time, William Shatner had it the bicycle hauled to the top of the ceiling in the studio. So they would have a good time killing each other, and every now and then one might go a little too far, and they'd apologize. But those are some great memories.
Wow.
One time, Robin Curtis, who played Saavik in parts 3 or
Yes.
4, she told us the heartbreaking story of how she had hoped she would get to play Saavik in part 6, The Undiscovered Country. But for some reason, Nicholas Meyer wasn't thrilled with her interpretation of Saavik, even though I think she followed Leonard Nimoy's direction very closely as he directed parts 3 and 4. But then they ended up going with Kim Cattrall as a totally different character. But I agree with her, it would have meant a lot more if Saavik would have been the one who betrayed Spock and the Federation, because we had gone to know her through parts 2 through 4 instead of some new character doing it that Spock supposedly had met in the past and knew that we had never been introduced to. So yeah, great. It's just great when they share those behind the scenes stories, and it's a personal pain too. She was very disappointed not to be involved. You
My
have any
understanding
favorite
of that
canon?
is that they thought that people might have pleasant memories of Saavik, and they didn't want to sully that by making her a villain in the 6th film.
Yeah, because I feel that's where it would have been so effective to have her as the villain, because it would have shocked us as the audience if we would have felt betrayed by someone so integral to the Federation. But yeah, again, Kim Cattrall did great in the role. It was a great film. Do you have any
Yeah.
favorite Star Trek movies or episodes?
Uh um I've said this before. The 2009 movie is one that I could watch again and again and never be bored with it.
Yeah.
Um I do, let's see. Of the original cast movies, I like the 6th one is my favorite.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know for most people it's the 4th one, but the 4th one got a run on national television. I've seen it so much I get bored with it. And then my favorite Next Generation movie is Generations. Actually, I really I really enjoy
Oh, that's good.
Generations, but then uh, I was in love with that Galaxy class starship, and it tore me up when they destroyed it.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I cried in theaters when the shockwave blew through the planet and destroyed the saucer section. I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit that really shook me up. Then that that happened, but in the end, everything was okay and it survived. So, and
Yeah.
then got brought back to life for in Picard. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
Malcolm
fond of
McDowell.
that. I
Cool.
love the Galaxy class starships.
Okay.
So
Oh,
I'm a starship.
okay. I'll never forget in seventh grade, we had to, I think we were doing geometry, and I had to draw something, and I drew the Starship Enterprise. But she told me, "Are you sure this isn't upside down?" And I was like, "No, that's how the ship really looks." So my teacher in seventh grade was not familiar with Star Trek. I
Okay.
haven't forgot it. Yeah, I know. She felt like the big saucer part should be on the bottom. And I was like, "No, that's not how this ship works." So,
Ah,
but yeah, I've always been fascinated with the ships as well. Malcolm McDowell, who played the villain, kind of in Star Trek Generations, he came to Dragon Con. He's come to some Star Trek conventions. Since the movie group is also for horror, and sometimes I like to do things to kind of shock people. So one time I convinced a local movie theater, they were already planning to show, now the names escape me, it's a famous British movie where Malcolm McDowell plays a villain. Mm. Okay, well, anyway, in the movie, he kind of terrorizes people, and as he does it, he sings a song from Singing in the Rain. And so he told us the story about how he met Gene Kelly, who originally sang it in the movie Singing in the Rain. And Gene Kelly wouldn't even talk to him. He just walked off. He was so offended about how his song had been misused as Malcolm McDowell sang it to torture people. And so one time I convinced the local movie theater that was going to show this British horror movie to also show Singing in the Rain before it. And the Nashville Scene
okay.
newspaper called us cheeky bastards for doing something so irreverent. But so I like to have fun with the groups too, and kind of pair things up that people might not normally put together, but there is a connection.
Okay.
But
Nice.
McDowell's, he was a lot of fun at conventions if you ever get to
Yes.
see him. Um, and
He went
let's see,
on
there was
to
one other
do
star I
the
thought about. Oh,
Halloween movies too. For Rob Zombie, he played
yes.
Donald Pleasance's character. I can't Loomis for
Yes.
the for those movies. So anyhow,
And you reminded me of another Star Trek celebrity, Will Wheaton. Uh,
yes.
he is a lot of fun at the conventions I've seen him at. Have you ever gotten to meet him?
No.
Okay. By the way, I had to look it up. The movie I was trying to name, the British horror movie with Malcolm McDowell, is A Clockwork Orange. Sometimes I'm
Oh,
54, and sometimes things slip my mind for a second.
that's a
But
big McDowell
and
movie.
also it also starred. Speaking of celebrities, I got to meet Dave Prowse at Dragon Con. He played Darth Vader, and he was
Yes.
also had a minor role as a bodyguard in Clockwork Orange. And he said the great thing was about working with Stanley Kubrick is once people learned he had done so, they'd hire him. They said, "Oh, if you're good enough for Stanley Kubrick, we would love to have you in our project." Um, so yeah, little memories he would share. Um,
Okay.
well, with Will Wheaton, he was on a panel with Brett Spiner at Con, who played Data, and Spiner, I guess he can get his feathers ruffled maybe a little easily. Apparently, Patrick Stewart's nickname for him was Spiner the Whiner. This is coming from Patrick Stewart himself.
Oh,
And Brett Spiner just got a bristle when Stewart said that in front of several thousand people on stage. But what Will Wheaton said to him was, when I was growing up, I think he was a teenager when he filmed Next Generation. He said, "Well, I looked up at you and Jonathan Frakes and the others, and I was so jealous how you guys were all adults, and I was still a young kid. But now I look at you and I'm like, thank God I'm not as old as you guys are." So he said that to him, and then Brent Spiner was talking about new projects he was working on, and he mentioned he was going to play a robot in some series. And he said, of course, he drew from the greatest robot of them all. And without missing a beat, Will Wheaton jumped in and said, "Yes, I was a big fan of Twiki on Buck Rogers too." And again, Brent Spiner just kind of looked disgusted. But yeah, anytime you can get some of the cast members who've worked together before on stage together, they can kind of give each other a hard time, and it's a lot of fun.
Wheaton tells a story about Spiner that while they were shooting an episode, that Spiner leaned over. They were seated at their posts at ops and con, and that Spiner leaned over to him and said, "Patrick wants more sauce," and no explanation. And then they continued filming, and Wheaton listened closely, and there was a line that Shatner had that his English accent was messing with, and he was supposed to be saying source, but he was saying sauce. We need to find the sauce. So when
Oh
Wheaton
my.
heard that, he burst out laughing, and all of them looked at him like, "You insolent child! Why are you laughing? What's so funny?" So I like that story.
Yeah, apparently they got along very well together, all of them on set. I think maybe it took them a little
Yes.
while to get used to Patrick Stewart's approach, and maybe he was a little more serious, but something he loosened up as the series went on.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, one fan encounter. I should have not handled this the way I did. Gillian Anderson, you mentioned Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. I got to not really even meet her at a convention. I've got a ticket to get her autograph, and of course, there was a long line of people going through the line. And when I got up to her table, she had just gone to sit. And so she answered the phone and was talking and just signed my autograph and never even looked up at me. And then just they kind of just moved me on out the door. So I never even got to say hi to her. So if I'd had that to do over again, I would have stood there and waited for her to get off the phone before I presented my photograph to her to be autographed.
okay.
So yeah, there have been occasionally you'll meet celebrities that just really aren't into it. I guess they are just there for the money. So it's always nice to realize most of them, they're proud of their work and they appreciate the fans like us, still remember it decades later and want to go see them and talk to them about it.
You said Gillian Anderson. I think that was.
And I apologize. Help me out here.
I can't remember her
She
last
played
name
she was
either.
the whale biologist on
Yes, Gillian
Star Trek.
Anderson played Scully.
That's right. That's right. So I think her first name is Jillian. Now let's see here if I can
It
figure
is.
that. She was also on Seventh Heaven.
Yes,
Let's see.
Gillian. I
I'm
wish I had
Googling it
my.
here as we speak. And let's see. Okay, I'm going to have to go to Star Trek: The Voyage Home to find her name here. Yeah, most of the Star Trek celebrities, there's so many people in line to get autographs. They can't let you stand there and talk for too long. But usually you get to say like 20 or 30 seconds. And okay, this is why I got confused. The actress's name is Catherine Hicks, who played Jillian, was her name in Star Trek: The
Ah,
Voyage Home.
right.
So that's where I got the name Jillian in my head. But oh
Okay.
yeah, I didn't get her autograph, but I did get to hear Gillian Anderson speak at DragonCon one time. She came in to talk about her career in the X Files, and I'm sure some fans were disappointed. They would keep asking her like specific, detailed questions about X Files episodes, and Gillian Anderson would be like, "I'm sorry, I don't remember that." So
Okay.
I guess she doesn't go back and rewatch them and so forth. And fortunately, I didn't have a question for her.
Okay.
One thing I like to
Uh,
do with actresses, if I'm gonna ask them about something they made like 20, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of times I'll start my question off by saying, "A few years ago, you made this." And some of them it goes right over the heads, but others will realize that I'm kind of making a joke with them, and they'll be like, "Well, I appreciate you saying a few years, but we both know it's been 30 years. But thank you for not pointing out how long it had been."
For some reason, I'm reminded of a Family Guy episode where a science fiction convention comes to Quahog, and the family goes, and Stewie's excited. They've got the entire Star Trek cast, Next Generation cast there, and Stewie's excited to ask his question, but other audience members get chosen who instead ask questions like, I seem to recall that Gates McFadden was asked uh, about how someone I use a sponge when I do my dishes, and after a while it gets smelly. Is there something I can do to prevent that from happening? So the questions had nothing to do with Star Trek, and that really upset Stewie, which is why he invents a transporter to transport them all to his room where uh, he can spend time with them and ask them questions and go on adventures. In
Wow.
fact, I seem to recall that they went to McDonald's and Michael Dorn kept asking for the McDLT. Well, they don't make that anymore, Michael. Well, sometimes they have the ingredients and they'll do it for you anyway. So
I want to
that's
find
one
that
of
episode and
that's
cool.
it's more of a Meg episode because she falls for she's got mumps or something and is stuck in bed and she falls in love with Kirk Cameron from
Oh
watching
wow.
the Left Behind movies or something, and so yeah, it's more of a Meg episode than it is a Stewie episode, but the Stewie stuff is really fun.
Oh cool.
I
I'll have to see
recently
that.
found out that when Seth MacFarlane developed that series, he didn't think Stewie would be such a big character, and instead Stewie ended up being the standout character for the show. So
You never know. You never
yeah.
know. It's one of my favorite sitcoms. I enjoy, the classic comedies from the 70s and 80s. There was a TV show called Alice, and I grew up watching that before I discovered Star Trek. And so imagine my shock at a piece of the action where there's Mel played by Vic Tayback, where he plays like a gangster in Star Trek. And I
Okay.
never, just to it's fun as I watch Star Trek to say, wait a minute, I know this actor from something else. And Another, you mentioned Gates McFadden. I remembered I got to meet her. They started doing Star Trek creation conventions on the road, and they came to Murfreesboro, I think last year. And Gates
Yes.
McFadden was there. And one
I
thing she
didn't
said
realize.
happy on her panel that she was surrounded with several ladies of color. And she said, how great is this? How far we have come, where think how TV was, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And, they all kind of embraced her and so forth. It was a great panel. But she did another panel just by herself. And some people will ask her about Labyrinth. That's one of my favorite movies by Jensen, starring Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie. Because she did the puppet choreography in that. A lot of people don't know that. But then a couple of years ago at a horror film convention, they showed a little short episode called Finger. It's about a woman who goes around collecting fingers of wrongdoers. And lo and behold, when I watched that, Gates McFadden is the finger collector. And
Oh,
so that was what I asked her about at her panel, because I figured nobody else here is going to have seen this. And she was very nice and said, yes, I think a friend of mine, maybe a friend of my daughter's, is a filmmaker at Vanderbilt, or some local college. And I guess they approached me about playing this role in this little student film. And so, yeah, I said yes. And it was a lot of fun and so forth. So it's always fun just seeing celebrities from Star Trek pop up in other stuff. And I thought Gates McFadden was very effective in a horror movie. Or this horror film short. So maybe she'll do horror again sometime.
maybe. The only other movie I've seen her in was one of those it was like I'm trying to remember the name of the main character in him. It was played by Harrison Ford at first. Uh Clear and Present
Yeah, the Clear and
Danger,
Present
but
Danger or
yeah.
Patriot Games, maybe
One of those, yeah, she played
Jack
his
Ryan
wife in.
movies.
Yeah. She
Okay,
played the main
okay,
character's wife. Ryan was in his name. I can't remember his.
yeah, Jack Ryan, I think
Yeah, Jack. That's it, Jack
was it.
Ryan.
Yeah,
So, anyhow,
cool. She's a great actress.
yes,
Yeah,
and a great
as I
dancer.
understand it. Okay,
We got to
As I
see her
understand it,
dance
she
and
was.
in the episode
I have not
Data's
seen
Day.
it. Cool. Yeah, I think that she even got to direct an episode. I think maybe she had a hard time getting to direct an episode, and finally they gave her the opportunity. I know you sometimes you hear other actresses, the male stars on TV shows will get a chance to direct episodes, and then a female star will want to. Then suddenly they get a lot of pushback from the producers. I read recently Linda Gray on Dallas. Think that she had to threaten to quit before they would finally let her direct, as Larry Hagman and Patrick Duffy were. She was telling that story at a convention I met her at recently. And so I must say that Gates had to go through the same thing. But I think they let her go. She had to fight with her. There was some producer maybe that she had disagreements with, and they let her go for season 2. And then I think, as I understand it, she says that producer person was let go after season 2, and then she got to come back. In case people
Okay.
wonder why she was not involved in the season 2 of Next Generation. Do you know more
I think
details
I
on that
know
one?
who it
Or
was, but I don't want to sully
okay, yeah,
his name. But
right,
yeah,
right. Yeah, she never
so
has. She just says it. She just says like a producer or somebody. She hasn't.
yes.
I've never heard her say the name. So yeah, good idea.
Okay. Well, I wish I had looked to see what time we started, but I think
I think it was
we've,
around 1:15 or so, but 1:20. But yeah, uh,
oh, it's
it's
three
been
o'clock
great to chat
now.
with you,
So,
Joe. Yeah,
pardon?
yeah, it's about the time we talked about. Yeah,
Okay.
I really appreciate you having me on, Joe, and I really appreciate all that you, Ryan, and Kathy do for the USS Athena group. It's been a lot of fun being part of it, and I'm kind of slowing down to 54, and so y'all kind of have youth on your side. And I was a lot more active in the meetup world in my 40s. I've also got groups for dining out and trivia and arts and culture and going to museums, but I'm not nearly as active as I used to be. So, but my favorite thing is to do these screenings of more obscure films and TV shows in my home, and try to introduce more new people to them. That's where it's been fun doing this with Star Trek, introducing people to some old episodes and maybe some corresponding movies or other work these actors have done.
Now, I'm sorry I can't attend those being in Ohio and all, but this is what they've got me doing, and I'm happy to do it to stay involved with the group and get to know people like you. So,
Well,
thanks
we really
again
appreciate it.
for attending or for agreeing to be a guest on Parthenon Particles, and hopefully I'll meet you sometime in the future.
Sure thing. If I ever get up to Ohio, I'll let you know. Thank you,
Okay.
Joe.
All right. Thanks again.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Once more, thank you, Derek, for joining us on Parthenon Particles. And as always, I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for watching our program and being a part of Starfleet Command and the USS Athena. If you aren't a member and would like to be, look for a link to join Starfleet Command in this video's description. Again, my name is Joseph Fugate, and I'll see you soon in another AthenaVision.